From the headquarters of Tell Your English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. As part of the new economic restructuring in Venezuela, the sovereign bolivar has been placed into circulation. It is pegged to the cryptocurrency, the petro. The sovereign bolivar's value will move in line with changes to the petro, which is linked to movements in oil prices.
All the measures that will be applied for the recovery, growth, and economic prosperity of Venezuela are already known. Last Saturday, the Venezuelan communication minister assured that these measures will protect the leaks of gasoline to border countries.
Stop the subsidies that will go to Cúcuta, to Colombia, and we will give the subsidies directly to the Venezuelans. This will mean that we will save on the fuel that we are using. There is a figure that the president gave, $10 to $12 million. That is what the mafias are taking to Colombia.
In the streets, there is hope before the arrival of the new economic era.
I ask the country to have hope, so that in a short time we will move forward with a big evolution. Transportation workers have praised what the president is doing. We are waiting patiently for this, but with certainty.
With unity and a positive mind, citizens say they trust this new stage in the country's economic future.
Both opposition and traders should work together for the good of Venezuela, because if the boat sinks, we all sink together. All Venezuelans must support these economic measures that the president has implemented in order for Venezuela to be the most prosperous country in the world.
The new economic system will soon begin. The banks are technologically ready to accommodate the implementation of the sovereign bolivar, and with it, the best of this economic revolution for the future.
Our correspondent in Caracas, Luis Tervera, has more on today's introduction of the new currency.
On Monday, the new monetary measure announced by President Nicolás Maduro came into force. It's part of the new economic recovery plan. The president also announced over the weekend that the minimum wage will now be increased to 1,800 sovereign bolivars. Finance and Economy Minister Juan Serpa will announce the measure that private businesses can take in order to receive a state subsidy to cover workers' salaries for 3 months. The new currency, sovereign bolivar, has circulated from this Monday.
We thank Luis for that report. 6 people have been arrested in Colombia over last week's bus crash near Ecuador's capital, Quito, which killed 23 people. Those arrested are linked to a drug gang. Colombia's Attorney General Nestor Humberto Martinez says those held are part of a group shipping drugs in vehicles. More than a half-ton of marijuana was found in the bus destined for Chile.
We have more than 1,000 hours of telephone recordings that allow us to prove the nexus of this organization with the drug trafficking business. And this organization has to do with the poster of the narco buses.
And in Colombia, the National Liberation Army, or ELN, has released proof of life of the 3 policemen, 2 civilians, and a soldier kidnapped last August 2nd. The men were kidnapped in the Choco department at the border with Panama. Colombian President Ivan Duque has requested their release to continue with the peace talks with the armed group, but the ELN says it's waiting for the government to establish contact to start a release protocol.
Inexplicably, the government has yet to ease contact with the ELN delegation. We asked for that so the relevant protocols can be started, something that could have been done 8 days ago, and it's delaying.
At least 14 people have been killed in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, during an anti-drug operation. 4,200 soldiers backed by armored vehicles and aircraft entered the Alemão and Mare favela complexes. So far, the military has confirmed 8 victims, but said the number of fatalities could increase. In a separate incident in the Rio suburb of Niterói, 6 suspected armed criminals were shot dead by the police. Brazil's military took over security in Rio de Janeiro 6 months ago in the face of escalating violent crime. And the former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has officially thrown his hat in the ring for the presidency. Meanwhile, the United Nations has asked the judiciary to allow him to exercise his political rights as a candidate. Mia Alberti takes a look at the candidates so far.
The electoral campaign in Brazil is on, but who are the candidates and what do they support? Leading the polls is former President Lula da Silva from the Workers' Party. A former union leader, he's well known for his social programs which helped fight poverty and hunger. And he's currently serving 12 years in prison for corruption and money laundering. Because of that, he might not be able to run. Instead, Fernando Haddad could take his place. The Minister of Education under Lula's government, he also served as mayor of São Paulo. His administration was known for liberal policies, but also for major protests that cost him a re-election, and the latest polls only give him a 2% rating. From the left to the extreme right, Jair Bolsonaro is the candidate for the Social Liberal Party. He served in the military for 17 years and picked a former general to be his vice president. Together, they support easier gun access and the possibility of military intervention. Their populist views appeal to a large conservative and evangelist crowd in Brazil.
Two opposite sides of the political spectrum. That's where the most popular candidates here in Brazil are standing, and that shows that the Brazilian people are divided. But experts say that's a political divide, not a social one.
Na campanha eleitoral parece final de campeonato.
The electoral campaign feels like the end of a football championship. Normally in society, there is no problem. Only at the end of the campaign do we see this polarization. And electoral campaigns have always created this. Unfortunately, this ends up being reflected in society. Some groups feed off this racial discourse. So in the long run, this can have serious consequences.
Between Lula and Bolsonaro, there are several other more moderate candidates, although not nearly as popular. It is the case of the ecologist Marina Silva, or centrist Ciro Gomes and Geraldo Alckmin, who only have 4% of intended votes. Other candidates, such as Guilherme Boulos, have less than 1% of votes.
These are some of the most contested elections in Brazil ever, and the division we are seeing right now might continue after the vote. If that happens, that will be another challenge for the next president of Brazil. Mia Alberti, Telesur, in São Paulo.
More news in a minute, so stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of Nicaraguans took to the streets of the capital Managua to once again support President Daniel Ortega. The government supporters carried flags and banners calling for peace. They accused the opposition of being part of a foreign-backed coup to unseat Ortega and say that some of them are terrorists. Since mid-April, the country has been in the grip of a political crisis that has left at least 265 people dead, according to the Commission for Truth, Peace and Justice.
We march for the victims, for all the mates who were killed during the coup they attempted against the government. That is why we are demanding justice, because human rights have to be the same for everyone, not just for one group or another group. It has to be even. Human rights are for all Nicaraguans.
Thousands of anti-government demonstrators also protested in Managua, demanding that President Ortega step down. They asked for the release of imprisoned activists as well. Demonstrators draped themselves in the colors of the Nicaraguan flag and called for justice and the democratization of the country. They want the government to call for early elections. And various organizations throughout Ecuador are calling for protests against the new economic measures proposed by President Lenin Moreno. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has the details.
Hello, yes, fishermen in Ecuador are marching today against the latest measures taken by President Lenin Moreno. According to them, the Minister of Aquaculture and Fishing does not make the necessary controls to protect their and guarantee their protection during his work at the sea. They are also calling for a march to defend their rights, and also they are rejecting these latest measures taken by the government, and also they are asking to President Lenin Moreno to meet with them, and also they are asking to remove the authorities from the Minister of Aquaculture and Fishing. Also, on the other hand, workers of the Union Workers of Ecuador, they are calling a march on September to defend also their rights, and also against the latest measures taken by Moreno against the increase in the fuel. That is all for now. We will keep you posted with more information as soon as we can. Back to you at the studio.
We thank Denise for that report. Threats against social leaders in the Colombian city of Cartagena have triggered special security measures. The spokesperson for City Hall, Yolanda Wong, said that 12 social leaders and their families have been threatened, targeted for their work in the community. An extraordinary security council has been set up in order to protect them. Meanwhile, social organizations, peace activists and religious leaders have met to discuss the murders of social leaders throughout Colombia.
More than 100 social and religious organizations have met in Bogota to prepare for the Week of Peace, a project that aims to unite the Colombian people under the slogan, "There is life, there is hope, we keep building peace."
The Week for Peace is an act in the name of hope. We believe that it's necessary to have hope despite the murders, persecutions, and the efforts to destroy peace. We think it is important to comply with the peace agreement signed with the FARC, especially the chapter regarding ethnic groups, indigenous and Afro-descendant communities.
During the meeting, activists denounced the systematic killings of social leaders. Social and Catholic organisations, along with the Attorney General's office, have started a campaign against the spate of violent deaths in the country.
The Week for Peace is an act in the name of hope. We believe that it's necessary to have hope despite the murders, persecutions and the efforts to destroy peace. We think it is important to comply with the peace agreement signed with the FARC, especially the chapter regarding ethnic groups, indigenous and Afro-descendants.
Activists are also denouncing the corruption in the judiciary, which according to them has increased since the peace accords were signed.
We see a clear intention to blame social leaders for violent acts and link them to armed groups to justify their murders. It is important to investigate every case.
Monsignor Fabio Heno made a call to protect life and in particular for the government to continue dialogue with the National Liberation Army.
The National Council for Peace made a call for the dialogues to continue and for a new bilateral ceasefire to be agreed on. We also hope for hostilities and kidnappings to end so that citizens can participate in the dialogues as well.
The Week for Peace will take place from the 2nd to the 9th of September across Colombia. Several forums, demonstrations and artist events are expected to take place in support of the project.
The governmental transition in Mexico started this Monday. Outgoing President Enrique Peña Nieto and President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador have already held their meetings, but members of the current government and the incoming one were scheduled to meet at the National Palace on Monday afternoon. Sources say cordiality is expected to dominate the meeting. And López Obrador has announced that he will launch a referendum on the new Mexico City airport. The new president said the controversial construction was tainted by corruption during his electoral campaign. López Obrador added that he plans more public consultation on various matters.
We are not going to limit the decision to a man or to a handful of technicians. Instead, it will be put to the consideration of all Mexicans.
Here in Palacio Nacional, the official government location here in Mexico City, where the still acting President Enrique Peña Nieto held a meeting with the President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador, a meeting that started the transition process that will end on December 1st, when Andrés Manuel López Obrador will be sworn in as Mexico's new president. In the meeting, both members of both cabinets were present and discussed different issues on the transition process, and also on sensitive topics such as the building of the new airport in Mexico City, a project that has been on discussion and been highly conflictuous during the last few years, and the liberation and exculpation of the boss of the teachers union, Elbester Gordillo, that was released today, and said that with her release, the educational reform that was pushed by Peña Nieto has officially ended. Something that both the acting president and the president-elect said that it is not so. The acting president says that the reform will still be in place as long as they stay on the government, and the president-elect says that they will start a process to change the educational reform when they take in as president.
We thank Pablo Perez for that report. Now, Mexico's president-elect has also been outlining his political plans as he prepares to take office. Austerity and education were high on the agenda during the meeting of his political party.
The Morena party made clear the kind of government it intends to be when it takes office on December 1st, during its 5th Congress meeting.
An austere, honest and effective government that will liberate the funds of the country for its development and for the benefit of the people.
The party president highlighted main aim of the Morena party.
We sowed a seed in all of Mexico. There is proof that a revolution of awareness has started.
One of the topics at the summit was giving away of 50% federal funding, which by law they're entitled to. This is one of the austerity measures of AMLO's government.
Every day I am more convinced that the work is being done. I am convinced of a big change that lies ahead for Mexico.
For the first time in Mexico's history, we are going to have a government for the people and by the people. And Mexico is going to prosper. We are going to start the reconstruction of our country.
Andrés Manuel López Obrador will take the oath on December 1st in the Zócalo of Mexico City.
And still in Mexico, more than 200 agents are looking for human remains in the Juarez Valley. Drug cartels have turned the desert into a cemetery. Dozens of clandestine graves have been discovered there since 2017. The search is taking place in the El Millón stream, where agents of the General Prosecutor's Office have already found remains in 26 spots. The experts will compare and start a tally to determine how many people have been found in the area. And Peru's autonomous National School of Fine Arts has been celebrating 100 years since its inception. As part of the celebration, an exhibition called Plural is on display. It represents the various genres and artistic styles of the visual arts graduates from the Institute.
138 graduated painters from the School of Fine Arts between 1977 and 1992 have displayed their artwork in the exhibit Plural. Many are award-winning artists, well recognized all around the world. The exhibition shows diversity of genres, as neo-figurative, that Orlando Segarra uses to transmit an ecologist message.
I wish all beaches from Peru to be like this. Clean, healthy, full of life, love, that makes one feel fresh, suited with the rhythm of the sea waves.
Plural is one of the activities held for the centennial anniversary of Peru's School of Fine Arts Study Center, and according to its students, it symbolizes the formation of craft.
The craft means drawing, composition and rhythm, all the elements that are important in an art piece, All these elements are valid for painting, music and architecture, for all the arts.
In this exhibition, genres such as hyperrealism, impressionism, kinetism, pop, and abstract can be found. The common factor are the artists who studied fine arts during the internal armed conflict times, as well as during the Morales Bermudez and Fujimori's tenure.
Many of them played a part in groups that started their artistic work, committed to social causes, with forefront artistic collectives, breaking continuity with the traditional art schools, etc. With experimentation of new mediums, this is the generation that somehow consolidate the contemporary art of Peru.
The School of Fine Arts is considered a national heritage of the country. Distinguished masters and Peruvian artists as Daniel Hernandez, José Sabogal, Guzmán Suárez Vertiz are some of the most famous artists who graduated from this prestigious institute.
Time for another break. We'll have more news in a minute.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the new source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. Greece has made its exit from the biggest bailout in its financial history. A three-year program saw Greece borrow around $330 billion, saving it from going bust and abandoning the euro. The road to recovery, however, is far from over, as many Greeks say they aren't optimistic about the future.
Buenas tardes, saludos a toda nuestra audiencia. Hoy finaliza el tercer rescate, el rescate impuesto por la
Greece's third bailout is over. This 86,000 million euros bailout was imposed by the Troika in 2015. If we make the add with the other two previous bailouts, we have a total of 241.6 billion euros. This money was given to Greece in exchange of deep reforms and structural adjustments with a neoliberal approach. Through this program, the Troika has provoked the privatization of ports, airports, water and electricity. Law was also modified to make evictions easier. 14 measures were taken to cut on pensions, which provoked a loss of an average 45% of the pensioners' purchasing power. Workers have also suffered an average cut of 20% in their wages. President Alexis Tsipras promised he would not apply these cuts. However, in 2015, after the referendum in which Greek citizens massively voted against austerity, Tsipras considered he was not powerful enough to face the Troika, and so he signed this third bailout that ends today. Now the question is, if from now on Tsipras' government will be able to follow its program with social policies and public investments, or if on the contrary, Tsipras will continue with the austerity policies.
The Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has announced a 3-month ceasefire with the Taliban. In a televised speech, Ghani warned that the truce would only be upheld if the Taliban cooperates. The announcement follows a week of fierce fighting between Afghan forces and the Taliban in the city of Ghazni, killing around 250 people and destroying infrastructure. According to the United Nations, residents are in need of humanitarian aid.
Once again, we announce a ceasefire that will take effect from tomorrow, Monday, the day of Arafah, till the day of the birth of the Prophet Milad un-Nabi, on the condition that the Taliban reciprocates and remains committed to it during these days.
And separated Korean families have been allowed to reunite temporarily in North Korea. Around 330 South Koreans from 89 families met their relatives after more than 6 decades apart. This is the first time in 3 years a reunion has taken place. Families have been separated since the 1950 to 1953 war in the peninsula. And tens of thousands of Muslims have gathered in Saudi Arabia for the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Pilgrims began ascending Mount Arafat on Monday, also known as the Mount of Mercy, for a day of prayers and reflection. Worshippers believe Prophet Muhammad delivered his final sermon on this rocky hill southeast of the holy city of Mecca. After sunset, pilgrims will leave for nearby Muzdalifah to perform the symbolic stoning of the devil. The annual Hajj brings together more than 2 million Muslims. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesur.tv.net/English. And you should also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.